Welcome back after our lunch break. I hope you enjoyed the opportunity to have exchanges with other participants of this conference. I saw some very lively exchanges, and we will have another opportunity of pursuing that at a coffee break later. But now we're about to have the second keynote of today, and that's going to be delivered by Marjan Minnesma. And if you looked at her CV in the program, you will have found that in different roles, she has learned all the arts of fighting for environmental and climate issues. But more recently, she has fought a very stunning success over the Dutch government. And that story, I think, opens a new perspective for all of us. So we're very happy to have her. She has a busy day, very busy day today. She will explain in a minute why that is. But before Marjan takes the podium, we will show a little video that introduces her work.
Urgenda wint in Nederland een klimaatproces. Nederland moet meer doen tegen de opwarming van de aarde.
In 2020 moet de uitstoot met zeker 25% zijn teruggebracht ten opzichte van 1990.
Het berusten in een geringere reductie is onrechtmatig tegenover Urgenda.
Geweldig. Van A tot Z geweldig.
Ik was echt aan het wachten van oké, er gaat hier nog een maar komen. En die maar kwam niet. Dus ik was, ja, zoals iedereen hier, denk ik.
Ik probeer net te twitteren, ik had echt trillende vingers. Ik vind het echt een historische uitspraak waar ik word heel emotioneel van.
Wat een ontlading.
Ja, dit is ongelooflijk. We hebben zo hard gewerkt voor deze zaak. En het is uiteindelijk zo'n groot maatschappelijk belang waar het hier over gaat. Dat ik er niks aan kan doen dat ik even mijn professionaliteit hier verlies.
Wat maken uw kinderen mee en mijn kinderen en kinderen van mensen die thuis aan het kijken zijn als we niets doen of te weinig doen? Wat gebeurt er dan met Nederland en met de wereld?
Nou, het allerbelangrijkste wat ik voor me zie is dat het hele grote gedeelte van de wereld geen water meer is, geen voedsel. En daardoor gaan honderden miljoenen mensen zich uiteindelijk verplaatsen en dan krijg je gewoon uiteindelijk oorlog. Daar maak ik mij deze eeuw veel meer zorgen over dan bijvoorbeeld of onze dijken het houden, want die houden het nog wel even. Dat komt daarna.
Wat moet er, vindt u, nu meteen gebeuren? Wie moet het voortouw nemen om dat te realiseren wat u wilt?
Nou ja, de staat heeft nu van de rechter te horen gekregen, u moet meer gaan doen. Dus het is de staat die aan zet is. En wij zitten vol met ideeën over hoe dat mogelijk is. Dus ik help ze graag.
Is het de premier die aan zet?
Wat mij betreft zou dit Rutte's zaak moeten zijn en moet hij ons gaan leiden naar die nieuwe economie die niet meer draait op fossiel en circulair wordt.
Dit zal nog een lange echo hebben. Het is nu niet alleen de paus, maar het is ook de rechterlijke macht die zegt: Nederland, politici, Mark Rutte, je moet aan de bak.
Thank you very much. I've seen it 20 times, but every time it gets back to me when I see the movie. I think most people did not hear about Urgenda before we won the court case, because we've been mainly working in the Netherlands for the past 10 years. I would like to start a little bit with the things we were doing, because it shows that we really moved from doing positive things, solar panels, etc., onto divestment, onto the climate case, and still doing the things that we started with as well. Because we're not only against something, we are also pro something. And I would like to show you a little bit of the journey that I made through the time. I've been working for more than 25 years on sustainable energy and on renewables, etc. And from Central and Eastern Europe at Novem up to, well, all over the world. And then in the end, I was working for an Institute of Transitions at the Erasmus University, and I was leading it together with Professor Rotmans. And I said, yeah, we have 40 PhD students here that produced a book about how we can make the transition, but are we going to use this to really make the transition? Because it's nice to work for 10 years in a university and have ideas, but we should really make the swap. And then he felt inspired and thought, okay, let's do it. And we invented the Urgenda, which was in the end an urgent agenda. We started just by saying, this is what we need to do. And then it got in the Dutch newspaper, and then we had thousands of reactions of people who said, yeah, we should do that. Are you going to do it? And then we said, okay. So at first it was just simply an agenda, and then in the end it became a foundation, and now it's an organization that people know as Urgenda. But it's based on this transition theory. How can we make the swap from a fossil fuel-based society that's not a circular economy yet to a circular economy on renewable energy? And we started with many positive things. We invented the Day of Sustainability, and on the first day of sustainability, 20,000 people were active that showed we are working on this and that, and we're opening a new store, and we do. And then suddenly the people in the Netherlands thought, oh, the movement is much bigger than we thought. And the next year there were 40,000 people active, and now the last few years there were more than 100,000 people doing something on the Day of Sustainability to show that the movement is much bigger, but it's very often below the surface, because so many people work in their village on something positive, but they don't show it in the newspaper. And on this day it suddenly becomes very manifest that there are so many people that want a different road. And we started with the first electric cars that were produced in series in Norway. Nobody knew them, and we thought they should come to the Netherlands. And we said to the big cities like Amsterdam and a few others, please buy these electric cars because you should give an example. You have such a big mouth about climate and so on, and about clean air. And they did. So they had suddenly a few hundred of electric cars, and they thought, okay, now we need charging points. So they started to put charging points in the street. And Amsterdam has a very, very many charging points now, more than any city in the world, I think. So we tried to change the system and move on. And the same with solar panels. In the Netherlands, we had people that could ask for a subsidy. And within 5 minutes, all the subsidy was gone. And there were 30,000 people that didn't get it, and that they were then doing nothing and waiting for the next year until the subsidy was there again. And I thought, well, if we would bring all these people together and we buy together the solar panels, can we not bring the price down with the same amount of your subsidy and do it without subsidy? So we announced it. We are going to buy solar panels. I'd never bought any solar panel in my life, and it was on the front page. And we got thousands of people who just paid upfront 20% of a whole package, solar panels and inverters and everything, and said, yes, buy solar panels for us. And we made a deal with the Chinese big factories, and we could bring the price 30% down compared to the market price at that time. And then all these people said, yeah, we want to do it. And I thought very naively, I have already 20% in a new bank account that were several millions. I need 20 in total, and we need to bridge 6 weeks. I will get this money for 6 weeks. But then you go to banks, and then they say, well, we have an investment committee, and they have a checklist, and they say, have you owned money? No. Did you do it before? No, no, no. And I couldn't get the money for even 6 weeks. And then I went to China, and I showed them, look, I have a new bank account, I have millions in it, I did already sell the solar panels, but I just cannot get the money. And they said, this is a new business model, collective buying, and it's the first we see in Europe. We help you, you get a few cents per watt peak, that's the jargon in solar panels, less, your price will be a little bit lower, and you have to pay 3 weeks after it arrives in Europe. So we emailed, because we didn't have any budget, we did everything by email, emailed to the thousands of people, yes, we're going to do it, and if you pay 3 weeks in advance, you get 50 euro extra discount. And everybody did that. So I had 20 million in a bank account, completely new. I didn't need a bank, I didn't need any subsidy, and that was at a point in Netherlands that everybody thought, oh, collective buying, that's a nice idea. And now we have hundreds of those actions. So that's what Urgenda typically does. We start new things and then we hope other people will follow and then we move out and go to the next thing. And we're now working on making complete houses energy neutral, so make them completely on renewable energy. And we can do it now for 30,000 to 35,000 euros. That's the amount that an average family in the Netherlands spends on energy in 15 years. So if you would bring this amount up front and you invest in making it energy neutral, you don't have an energy bill, and in 15 years' time you pay the same amount back. Well, that's already possible, and we're now trying to scale it up, and we hope that in the end pension funds will come in because they have a lot of money which they should divest from fossil fuels into these new houses. So we were doing all these things, and they were quite nice, and I was looking backward and I thought, are we going quickly enough? We have 400 corporations in the Netherlands working on local energy, but they're just 1% of the whole fossil fuel market. And we're not moving quickly enough. So I was like, yeah, I can go on with doing all the nice things that we do. We were working with many front runners. We were trying to help them with scaling up and become the niche that would be, in the end, the big regime, which is the transition theory. But I thought it's not going quickly enough because we don't have 2 generations to make the swap. We only have 20 years. And if you take the 350 seriously, we don't have until 2050. We should do it within 20 years. So we made a report last year. I worked on it for 2 years with all institutes in the Netherlands, lots of professors and so on, because the first thing people say is, yeah, you want to do it in 20 years, but that's not possible. And I thought, yes, it's possible, but we don't want to. So the report gives the answer whether it's possible, and it is possible. We have all the techniques. We don't have to invent anything. We can afford it. We have enough people. We really made the calculations like how many windmills on sea, how many boats, how many people on the boats, and really checked, can we do it? Can we make all the houses energy neutral within the next 20 years? Do we have enough builders and installers and so on? And we came to the conclusion, yes, we do. And in the meantime, we have a lot of new jobs. And in the Netherlands, there are still a lot of people on the couch not working, particularly in the building sector. I'm not saying that it's easy, because the next thing that people say is, we've never done it before, the government doesn't want it, and they have all kinds of reasons why we shouldn't do it. But if we can, and if we feel the urgency in our toes, then we can do it. And usually, I have swapped my story and not only tell the nice things, but I start with the urgency part. And I thought you already know this, so I don't have to do that. But usually I do 1/3 urgency, and then just when you're almost depressed, I say there is a solution, and you can work on it, and these are the solutions. Well, in this book, you can see all the solutions, and I'm not going through it, but the most important thing is it will end up with a system that's even 3 billion cheaper in 20 years' time than if you would go on with fossil fuels, because our gas is gone within 20 years. Then we have to import it from Russia. Then we become dependent, because we've been very independent because of our gas. And the prices will probably go up. I don't think Putin will give us a big discount. And what does it cost us? It costs us 1.5% of the GDP per year to make the switch. And 1.5% of the GDP is a lot of money. It's about 9 billion a year. But we spend 2.5% on oil, and we don't even notice. So we, as an extremely rich country, can afford this. And then in 20 years' time, we have a 100% renewable society, and we are independent. And our children have a chance to make it. I would say, why don't we do this? And you have to have a very good reason if you don't do this. I don't see it. So in the book, we explain what we need to do on houses, and that's another half an hour, which I don't have, so I'm not going to do that. We work on electric cars and on charging stations, on different types of food. And in the end, if industry would just reduce energy with 2% per year, it would already be enough to make this scenario. And they could do much more than that. And the rest, if we would do all this, then we would use a lot less energy, and what we still need, you can do with large-scale sun and wind and a number of other solutions. And they're all there. We could make all our greenhouse gases, all our greenhouses on geothermal energy and so on. So there are solutions for every part of our society. And then I thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. So we are working on those houses and on the cars. We have teams on all different topics, but we need to do more. And when I read the Carbon Tracker report and I heard what was happening in America on the divestment movement, I thought, yeah, that's a very good thing to do. So we started with that as well, and we went with many students to the big universities in the Netherlands, because they are all part of the pension funds ABP, and that's one of the largest investors in the world. And all people working in universities have to take the pension fund ABP. So we went with the students to the boards and said, can you make sure that the pension funds divest? You are one of the larger employers in the Netherlands, so please start this discussion. And the first 5 we did said, yes, we will, and they have started discussions. You know, they first start with dialogue, and okay. And in the end, Lisette, who works for us, moved to 350 and is now doing the work from a separate organization in the Netherlands, but we still help her where we can and do a lot of the communication around it because we have a larger staff. And I also welcome the idea of going back to the streets. I don't think that a like or a retweet is enough anymore. And last year, when we had the big marches going on, it was already August after our summer holiday, and I was calling to the big Greenpeace Friends of the Earth in the Netherlands and said, we have the highest number of NGOs per square meter in the world. What are we doing? And nobody was doing anything because it was not in the yearly plan. That's the way the big NGOs work nowadays. And I said, yeah, but we should do something. So we organized the march in Amsterdam, and there were between 3,000 and 5,000 people. And I think that we should become bigger and bigger and show physically that we want it differently. I'm going to walk myself from the 1st of November until the 28th of November from Utrecht in the Netherlands to Paris, 520 kilometers. I would like you to join me. Anybody who would like to join me one day, 1 week, 1 weekend, please. It would be very nice to have an international audience as well. But we have invited the princess who is going to join us, and a famous DJ, and all kinds of people to make sure that we get the attention. And the Dutch Broadcasting Organization will be walking with us and broadcasting it 5 minutes every day live on TV. So I think that's a very nice way to address climate and water, climate and biodiversity, well, and all the other topics that we would like to bring onto the table. And then we have a platform, kind of think tank of people who are front runners in different fields of society. And one of those people is a lawyer who's a real front runner. And he was very worried about climate change. And he made an analysis himself, and he thought, politicians will never do it. It won't go quickly enough. There's only one part of a democratic society that's really able to look at the facts and make a judgment based on the facts and then say it's so badly, we do need to do more, and that's the judge. So he wrote this book, and I have studied law myself, and I thought, yeah, it might be very difficult, but I think it's something we should try. So that's how the court case started, and that was already in 2012. We invited James Hansen to come to the Netherlands and talk about the urgency of climate change. And we wrote a letter, because you first have to have a dialogue, otherwise you're not allowed to go to court. So we wrote a letter to the state and said, we want 40% reduction in 2020, and if you really don't want to, 25 to 40%. That's the legal way of phrasing things. And then they answered us and wrote us a very nice letter that said, yes, climate change is very urgent, we fully agree with you, and industrial states should do between 25 and 40%. So they already acknowledged what the judge later said. So it's not that the judge invented something which some politicians in the Netherlands want us to believe. But in the end they said, well, although we agree, we don't want to become a front runner. And if you know that we are only on 4% renewables and we're number 24 out of 25 countries in the EU, this is really a bit laughable. And we think that it might not be good for our industry. And the big companies in the Netherlands are all asking for more climate change policy. So this is also a stupid argument. So we don't want to do what you asked for. So that was the good reason for us to go to court. And you already know things like crowdfunding and so on. And we invented crowd pleading. And we asked all people in the Netherlands, do you have any argument? Do you know of any court case somewhere in the world that could help us? Please let us know. And also, do you want to be a co-plaintiff? Because we want to go to court on behalf of many people. So we had 900 co-plaintiffs. And all those people have been with us all the time. And this picture that you just saw was the handing in of the first legal package, and that's only a 5-minute work. You just put it on a desk and then that's it. But we were there with hundreds of people, and of course a lot of cameras and so on, and said, yeah, we start a court case today. And there were a lot of parents on behalf of their children and so on. So it was really a big happening. But everybody said it will never work. There were many journalists that asked professors and so on, what do you think about Urgenda's court case? And all of them said, no way, must be a PR stunt. So up till the 24th of June, nobody else besides the two lawyers and myself believed that we had a court case that we could win. Well, it took 1.5 years because you have to put something in, then they answered, then we answered, and they answered. And then this year, on the 14th of April, we finally were in court to discuss it amongst each other with the 3 judges. And I think what's important, what many people don't realize, is we didn't appeal to the climate change treaty or not to human rights or whatsoever. It's simple civil law, and we said this is an unlawful act. And that's a basic thing in every democratic system. And therefore, we also think that you can do it in almost every country. So the special thing is that you can't go directly to many things, but you can use what's happening to make your case. And I'm going to explain that in a little bit later. The court says, yes, this is a legal question, and that's also very important because today our government announced that they will appeal because they think that the judge did their job, that he did policy work. And the judge very clearly said, no, it's a legal question whether there is hazardous negligence. You can have a different opinion on that, but it is a legal question. And if an NGO and 900 citizens come to the court and ask, please, judge, protect us from our government, they should do more, then a Dutch court has to look at it. It cannot even say, I won't. So, and the judge also said, yeah, the government has a last discretionary power, but it's not unlimited. I'm there to protect citizens from the government and say, this is the minimum level. This is the level that you as a government should do at least, and above that you can do whatever you want. And I think that's important because that's actually the main argument of the government now that they are trying to do. So the judge very clearly said, no, you cannot go to the Constitution, you cannot go to the climate treaty and so on, but if you want to prove an unlawful act, you have to say, is there a duty of care? And what is this duty of care? And that's the special thing in this case, that it's a so-called open norm. And to color this norm, you can go to the climate treaty and to what was said in the European Union context and what the Dutch government said the past 25 years on climate change. So to say there is a duty of care, the judge just went and looked through all the documents and said, yeah, there is amongst 195 countries an understanding that we should stay below 2 degrees. And all the science is in agreement on that too. So there is a large body of knowledge and a lot of signatures of the Dutch government that say, yeah, there is a minimum level and we should stay below the 2 degrees. And that's, I think, important that you cannot go directly to climate change treaties and so on, but to color this norm, you can use it. And that's, I think, the special thing here. And to color this norm, the judge also looked at a lot of principles that are in the climate treaty and so on, but also that the European says, on climate change, we want a very high level of protection. Well, we are part of the European Union, so if we want this, then that's also part of your duty of care, a very high level of protection. So in the end, the court said, well, climate change is apparently a very big risk, it's a very big problem, and we are currently doing insufficient things to reach the 2 degree targets. We are up for 4 to 6 degrees. The science is very clear on that, so we're not doing enough. And adaptation is not the way to go. The only way that you can stay below the 2 degrees is mitigation, and as quickly as possible. So I think that's very good for many people working in the field, that the judge acknowledged many of the things that we have been saying all the time, and he wrote it down very nicely. I think the verdict is a great piece of work and a piece of legal art. So the state does have a serious duty of care, and therefore should make this statutory and instrumental framework that makes sure, for as much as possible, that we stay below the 2 degrees. And currently, the Dutch government has as a goal only 16%, which is not enough to stay below the 2 degrees. And of course, the Dutch government said a lot of things like, well, we cannot afford the measures, and then the judge said, well, that's nonsense, because in 2010 you still had 30% as a goal, and you halved it in the past few years. But if you had a few years ago still 30, and our neighboring countries are doing 30 up to 40, you cannot say that you cannot do 25. That's just an answer that I don't take. And then the state said, well, we do adaptation. And the judge clearly said, no, that's not enough. We should do mitigation. And also, capture and storage of CO2 is not a solution. It's too expensive, it's not proven enough, and it's not quickly enough there in large enough quantities. So actually, based on the science and everything we put forward, which was not disputed by the Dutch government, the judge made a lot of statements that I think are very useful also in other countries if you're going to try to do this again. So I think this is the last and bigger argument of the state was, well, we only do 0.5% of the total amount of greenhouse gases in the world. And then the judge says very clearly, well, you are with 195 countries, so if everybody does 0.5, it will be quite good. And the first page of the Climate Change Treaty also says that there are different responsibilities for different countries, and everybody should do its fair share. And the industrialized countries should do a bit more than the other countries. And therefore, you have said together that the industrialized countries should do 25 to 40%. Everybody should do his own fair share. No country, not even China or the US, can make the solution on its own. So he was very clear, and there are a number of case studies that have been there in the past that also have the same line of reasoning. So the judge said, this is not a good argument. The whole climate change treaty was started because nobody could do it on its own. Well, then we said, well, we cannot do more than we have to do from the European Union. And then the judge simply said, well, look what Germany is doing and Denmark, they do much more than what the European Union is demanding from them. So why can't you do more? That's not a valid argument either. And then the Dutch government said, well, if we do less, then others will do more. That's what they call the waterbed effect. And then the judge said, well, we have studied what Germany, Denmark, and so on did, and we don't see the waterbed effect. And even if it's there, science said that this will be only about 11%. And this problem is so big that that should not be a reason not to do it. So actually the state was, and the lawyers of the state were really slapped in the face on every little thing they said. So, because climate change has very severe consequences, there is a duty of care to mitigate, and we should try to stay below the 2 degrees. And then he said, well, Urgenda actually asked for 40%, but subsidiary 25 to 40%. Maybe 40% is necessary, but the governments do have a large discretionary power, so that's up to them. But the minimum level of 25%, they cannot go below that. So I will give the 25%, and for the rest, it's up to the politicians. And the Dutch state today announced that they will appeal, that they also will do the 25%. So it's a kind of double message. They will do the 25%, but they will appeal because they think that the judge was sitting on their chair. So the trias politica argument. And what we are now saying is, if that's really your only argument, then there is a much more elegant way, because then you can go not into appeal and wait until the term is over, the 24th of September, and then the day thereafter you can go straight to the High Court and ask for what's called in Dutch cassatie in belang der wet. I don't know how you would translate that, but that means that you can ask for a legal question at the highest court in the Netherlands, and that they will answer this question, and for every new case you have this answer on the table. So it will not have an effect on our case then, that's a done deal, but if you really think that there's such a, because that's the argument they give in the press, that you can now go to the judge for everything, if you want more money because you're unemployed, you can just go to the judge. Stupid arguments like that. Well, I don't think that they will win this, but if they really are sure that they want to do the 25%, but they still want to ask the legal question, then there's a much quicker road that will only take half a year. And if they really go into appeal, then we can appeal twice, then it will take 2 to 3 years. So we were acting on behalf of almost 900 citizens as well, and the judge said, well, they already got what Urgenda got, so I'm not going into the detail whether they have a standing of their own. I'll leave that unanswered, and I think that was an elegant way of answering this question. So on the 24th of June, within half an hour, everybody in the world knew about this case. I was really surprised how quickly this spread. And also, I was very much surprised that it was more a matter of giving people hope. It was not only the court case. We had people crying on the phone that were watching us on their computer because we had everything live streamed. And they said, there's finally a chance, and I'm going to work on it again, and I have hope. And everywhere in the world there were people and NGOs that started to working on the topic again. And I thought that that was very special, that we didn't thought that in advance, and I would not expect that it would go internationally so quickly, but it did. And one of the reasons that it went so quickly is that the court made the translation in English. So at the moment it came out in Dutch, it also came out in English. And we have been translating all the other things that we did in advance, but it took us months to make a translation, and now it was there already on the day. And so everybody can read it. And if you have a little bit of time, I would say it's worthwhile reading. For a legal piece, it's quite interesting. So we've been asked now all over the world by people to help us, to help them, because they also wanted to try to go to court. The Belgians have already started, the court case is already out, but I've been visiting this summer Australia, and there's a number of my colleagues going around the world to tell people what's the difference between what we have been doing and many other court cases, because we're not fighting a mine or a decision. It's civil law, and that's a big change and another topic, and not what most people have been doing so far. And I think it's good to know that in large societal questions where the politicians often don't make the decision anymore, like now with climate change, but in past things in the Netherlands also, the big questions were often answered by the judge, and then later the law came in. And it happened with the civil rights movement in America too, but also the big problems in the Netherlands that have been tackled before were often first in court and then done by the politicians. So it's not a strange thing that this happens. And I think we still can make it with the divestment, with the movement, with all the things we have been doing. And I think we still have 20 years and we should do everything we can. Let's make the switch and go for the fully renewable society. And like with our court case, nobody believed that we could make it, and still we did. So don't give up too quickly, because it's always possible, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marjan. This is indeed bringing hope to a lot of people in our struggles. Even though we're running late a little, I would still want to allow you to ask a few questions. So I'll pick the first three and give Marjan an opportunity to answer those three questions. If you can be short, like previously, please. Who wants to take the floor? The lady in the back.
Is there a worldwide way to make the same as you did?
Well, I don't know which same you mean, but for the court case, I think you should do it per country. You cannot go to an European or an international court. But all the other things we're doing, like making countries 100% on renewable within 20 years, I think it's possible, yes.
Shouldn't we ask for the creation of a worldwide entity for such trials?
I'm very practical. I would do it by country, because you know the situation, you know the people, you know on where you have to press to get movement. What I do in the Netherlands, I couldn't do in another country, because I know the system and the people and everything. So I think that we can inspire each other and use the same mechanisms. Everybody can work on divestment and so forth, but I think you should organize it per country.
I think you're right, and just I wanted to add, but some territories are not inside countries.
That's true. Then we should invent something else.
There was somebody else here.
Thank you for the talk. I was wondering, given the fact that your case was based on tort law, is there any chance for the same reasoning to apply to private institutions and not only governments or public ones?
Yeah, actually when we started, there were a few groups in the Netherlands that were looking at court cases, and some wanted to attack Shell and some companies like that, and others wanted to do other routes. We thought that this was one worthwhile that we could also win. If you want to attack large companies, you have to prove much more and also have, say, a causation line between what they did and what it cost. And that's more difficult, but I think as time is running out, more and more possible.
One last. Back there.
Thank you. Are you aware of other similar initiatives in the world?
You mean as Urgenda or as a court case?
As a court case.
Well, I know that the Belgians have already started because we are assisting them, and they are partly also in the Dutch language. But we are now discussing with a number of groups of lawyers in at least 15 different countries, which are now studying our case and seriously considering to do something themselves.
Thanks again very much.
I don't know about France, no.
Marjan,
not yet.
give her a hand again, please.
Do you want this one?
And now I would like to invite May upstage with her first panel.